In this video, we're going to show you how to change your discs and pads on the rear axle of the vehicle. You would change the discs and pads on a vehicle when the pads are wearing down and coming towards the end of their life, and the discs when they're either severely pitted, like in this particular instance because the car's been parked for too long, or when the discs themselves are becoming thin and are coming towards the manufacturer's recommended minimum thickness. One thing to take note of is the style of handbrake as we're working on the rear of the vehicle. So this is a manual handbrake. The electronic one would require a diagnostic tool for you to plug into the car and wind it back electronically. So we're going to remove the caliper itself first, then the carrier, and then move on to remove the disc. As we are working on the rear caliper, we will have to make sure that the handbrake is off. So we've let that down and the vehicle is in first with the front wheels on the ground, with wheel chocks underneath the front wheels to make sure it's safe and secure. I'm just going to undo the caliper slide bolts now. Now that I've just loosened off these two bolts, I'm now going to loosen the two bolts on the carrier itself. So I've just removed the caliper off of the carrier. The carrier is still in situ, but the bolts have been loosened just so we've got a little bit more wiggle room. And I've moved the caliper out of the way in such a way where the brake flexi isn't pinched or holding the weight of the caliper. You want to make sure that the caliper is supported because that brake flexi does hold hydraulic fluid. So we've just moved it out of the way so that it's nice and safe and secure, and so that there's no additional strain being put on that particular pipe. So we've just taken off the carrier and also taken the brake pads out of the carrier. The next step will be to remove this brake disc. I'm just going to give this brake disc a little bit of a tap because it is unfortunately seized onto the hub, just to vibrate it free. Now that we've removed the brake disc successfully, we're now going to start by cleaning all the contact points. Every metal to metal contact point, we want to make sure it's clear and free of debris so that the pads can move freely. Some metal to metal surfaces we'll also clean just to make sure that rust doesn't build up. Now that we've cleaned all the contact points for all the metal to metal surfaces, we're now going to wind back the piston in the caliper. As this is a rear caliper, it's attached to a handbrake mechanism and it has like a ratcheting sort of mechanism within it, so you do have to rotate the piston itself for it to go back into the caliper. Some components I am putting a little bit of grease on. It's a ceramic grease, so it's high temperature resistant. And I'm putting it on this particular component here just for future ease of maintenance. What I'm looking at here is a contact area that's going to make direct metal to metal contact with the disc. I don't want the same issue that we had earlier trying to get the disc off with force. I'll also be putting a very light coating of the ceramic grease on all of the metal to metal components that require movement. But what I won't be doing is putting too much on, as we don't want to risk any of the brake components that are responsible for braking effort getting any sort of lubrication on them. Also, if the brake pads come with them, make sure you fit the anti-rattle shims. Now that we're reassembling the brake components, we're just doing everything in reverse order. First, putting the discs on. Make sure that you do check the manufacturer's recommended torque settings for all bolts or nuts that you've removed when reassembling the brake system. So everything has now been reassembled, everything has been torqued up to the manufacturer's recommended torque settings, and we're now going to put the wheel back on. There are 3 points that I'd just like to make. First of all, you would only ever replace the brake pads and brake discs on an axle. You would only replace the brake discs and pads together, or you would only replace the pads as a set. You'd never replace the discs alone. Point 2 would be that there is a bedding in period for any brake discs or brake pads that you do fit. I recommend 500 miles, but different brake disc and brake pad manufacturers will have their own recommendations. The third point is that before you do drive the vehicle, make sure that you allow for the pistons to come out of the calipers. I'll be doing that by sitting in the car and pressing the pedal gently until the brake pistons have made contact with those pads and that the pedal feels more in line with what it normally feels like. So if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, and for more DIY how-tos, check out the rest of them on the Silverline channel.